now going to move on to our panel. So if I can invite our panelists to unmute themselves, that would be great. So we have Sheryl, Cass, Lindsay and Laura on our panel this evening, talking all about confidence. Before we dive straight into the questions, could I ask you ladies just to introduce yourselves? Sheryl, I'll start with yourself.
Yeah. Hi everyone, lovely to be here tonight. I'm Sheryl. I am a people and recruitment specialist at ANS Group, the cloud and digital business, so in the tech industry. And I've been part of the Confidence Collective for the last 4 months now, and super nervous at talking on this, but I think the confidence journey that I'm on needs things like this to happen to improve on it and to build on it. So super happy to be chatting tonight, and great talks from Louise and Katie as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sheryl. Cass?
Hi, I'm Cass Whittingham, and I'm a business analyst at AO. I work in the, I can't even speak now, it's all coming out. I work in the logistics area, so dealing with some of the driver apps and the track your order systems. And I've worked in that area a little bit before, but on the other side of it, so we were supplying the system. So it's nice to get back into getting a bit more customer contact and working on that area. And same with Sheryl, really, been on the confidence course for the last 4 months. So this is really good to get involved in this and hope we can do more of this.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Thanks, Cass. Lindsay?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Bolton, and I'm a business analyst, very similar to Cass, for AO.com. And I work within the logistics part of the business as well, so supporting the warehouse operations side of the business. Really exciting. I get to wear a high vis and everything. It's so good. Feel very privileged to be here tonight and speaking, being a speaker as well. So I've joined seminars before, very similar, but actively looking up at people and felt very inspired. So having this opportunity is great. And yes, I'm 4 months into the Confidence Collective, and I'm looking forward to how we'll continue our journey together as well as a cohort. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lindsay. And Laura?
Hi everyone, I'm Laura. I'm a project manager at AO. I work really closely with Cass and Lindsay and Katie in logistics as well. So my team's logistics tech, so everything's to do with the warehouse to integrating new businesses into AO within logistics. Like the other girls, been on the course for 4 months now, and it has done me the world of good. And yeah, very nervous about being on this panel. It's definitely out of my comfort zone. I don't do things like this ever. So be kind. I think that's everything about me.
Brilliant, fantastic, thank you. And it's talking about a topic that's all close to your heart, so it will become very much more natural. I think introducing yourself is always the hardest part. So Sheryl, I'm going to start with yourself. So Katie's just been talking all about imposter syndrome. And whilst it's considered to be pretty well known, it's also different for everyone in terms of how it manifests itself. And I was only talking about this actually earlier on today, about even the word, about that term imposter syndrome. Not many people actually understand that thoughts and feelings is actually termed under that brand name. So what was your understanding of imposter syndrome to begin with?
Yeah, no, totally. And listening to Kate's talk there, and finding more out about imposter syndrome, it's a very real thing. I think pinnacle moment for me from when I first found out what it was. I remember where I was sat, how I felt, and it was actually sort of like a wow moment. It was at one of the meetup events of the WIT North in 2019 to be precise, and there was a talk on imposter syndrome. I'd never heard of it before, didn't know what it was, and all the collective feelings was discussed in there about being fraud, don't deserve to be where I am, I'll get caught out someday. I was like, wow, this is me. I've been feeling like this for 5-6 years of my career, and probably even before that, and never really been able to pinpoint what it was. And I think that bit there was the biggest bit for me, is just being able to actually call it a thing and say, you know, that I don't know, those feelings that I've always been feeling are actually identified as something. So that was, you know, a good few years ago. And from that, really, it's helped me understand me, you know, to try and build on me. You know, thought, actually, I need to get to know a bit more about this, like Kate was saying, as to how does it affect me personally, and sort of really actually get to understand that it's about the thoughts and feelings and how you can actually do something with it. I do have a bit of a love-hate relationship with it now, I think, in terms of like the actual term. You know, it's a medical condition, it's a bit of a label, it can be perceived quite negative, but I think it's part of your makeup, it's part of your personality, it's just a natural way of feeling sometimes. You know, we all get those sort of low confident moments, so I think it's just how you approach them and control those thoughts. So I think it's from finding out to finding out more about it, and even now it's a journey, and it's a continuous journey, and I don't think it'll ever go, but it's sort of capturing it and making sure I work with it.
Yeah, it's very much like that, isn't it? It's that love-hate relationship with it. Yeah. Because I always talk about it, and a bit more what Katie said. I was that person in the conference saying, yeah, but you know when you experience it, you're going into that growth zone, so it's actually a good thing. So yeah, I'll have to make sure, Katie, that I always follow that up with advice as well when I'm talking about it. So I've learned something today as well. But in terms of, obviously, like you said, around people, you know, feeling it in different situations. Just moving on to you, Cass, obviously, in terms of what would you say those typical characteristics that you feel that you know that you're going into that sort of imposter syndrome zone?
Definitely when I look around a room and look at everybody in that room and knowing that, not knowing, but in my head knowing that they are way up there and I'm just not, and why would I be there, and what have I got to offer for that, whatever topic is there. And it's really different. I mean, I didn't really have imposter syndrome until I moved into the world of IT, and that's when I really realised I'm looking in a room full of people and I know nothing and they know everything. In reality, our skill sets were just a little bit different. What I could offer them was something that they didn't have, and it was a different way of sort of looking at things. And it still comes on a bit of a daily panic, really. Everybody knows a little bit more than I do, but it's what you do with that and how you sort of go forward with it that's the difference.
That's really interesting what you shared then, Cass, and maybe quite relevant to people in our community about feeling it when they're entering technology. Would you just expand on that? Why do you think that was? And what industry were you in before? And obviously, as you transition to tech, and why, from you reflecting it back now, why do you think that came more apparent?
For me, I'd worked in customer services for so long in the bank. I was working for the Halifax at the time, and they just opened up a trainee IT school centre. So I applied just because one of my colleagues was looking for a job. They didn't want to apply, and I'm like, oh, I'll do that then, as a joke, really, just to see what happened. And boom, I got a job. And I was put as a trainee developer in a room full of IT graduates. So I've never been to university. I've studied different diplomas in different things, but never into an IT world. So it was definitely a challenge to a comfort zone and a challenge of what on earth. These guys already do have a bit of that background and I really don't, but also there was something there.
Yeah, and it's a bit about what Katie said in a presentation about that validation. You're looking for that certificate, you know, and if those people had more, you perceive them to have more knowledge in you, obviously then can really trigger those sort of thoughts and feelings of imposter syndrome.
Yeah, there was definitely that. I mean, as we went on through our training, let's just say it definitely wasn't me that set an infinite loop off in the coding and slowed the system down for 3 days. No, more of a spark on my side than somebody else's there. So.
And this is a matter of interest, Cass. Do you still feel that now? How long have you been within your role, and do you still have those feelings?
Oh, so I've been a business analyst for about 13, just over 13, nearly 14 years, and been in IT 15, I guess. Yeah, I still feel it now, definitely, especially when you move jobs. I think it's somebody else mentioned it before. They've just moved into another role, and you're going into that situation. You've come from somewhere where you really are at the top. You've got all your knowledge, and then you go somewhere else and you're learning new domain knowledge, and it kind of challenges everything. Not just about the domain, but it does challenge, like, do I actually know how to get these requirements? Do I know how to speak to people? And it goes back to that level of basic with me. Can I go out there and do that and pitch at the right level and instill the confidence? And if I don't feel confident in myself, how do I get that back? Yeah, it's good though. We do it.
You do it, and you've done it for so long, and you've progressed, and and you're now here talking about it. So that's all that journey of progressing and going forward, which is absolutely amazing. And touching upon, obviously, you talked about confidence there, and something, obviously, people who know me, I'm extremely passionate about, obviously, people returning to work situations, obviously being co-founder and CEO of an organisation called Tech Returners. We support people transitioning back into tech after a career break, and I know, Lindsay, it's a topic very close to your heart, and you've been on maternity leave and you returned to work, and you really wanted to talk a bit about those challenges and how that made you feel, because it can be very, very relevant, as I said in the introduction, about people returning after furlough, career breaks, redundancy, a lot of situations which might be relevant to a lot of people out there. So would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, so kind of just to set up the scene a little bit, really, I'm very fortunate to enjoy my role, my BA role. As I say, I work within the logistics arm of AO. It's very exciting. And at the point I was about to leave, to start my maternity leave, we went live with a really successful project. I think I skipped out of the warehouse on the last day. So I had a very positive, lasting impression to kind of hold on to during my maternity leave, which was a great feeling, and feel privileged to have that. So when it was time to return, a huge part of me was excited. I craved that old routine that I had, that professional part of me was back. I started to wonder what was next for me at AO. But I also started to think about, will I just fit back in and will it feel the same? And that anxiety inside me just started to bubble then as a result. And I had 9 months off in the end, so that was kind of my break. I'd say within my first few weeks, I naturally slipped into more of a listening, more submissive role. So it was quite unusual for me because I've always been quite an active player, someone that would drive conversations and actively challenge. But I always thought someone else, the people around me knew more. So I focused on what I didn't know rather than what I did. And that, I would say that anxiety just grew then. And I started to kind of wanted to evaluate my purpose in the team, and that feeling of self-doubt just got quite overwhelming. I'd say, like, for example, in meetings, just relating to what Louise was saying earlier around negative self-talk, I'd hear myself saying, I should know the answer to that question. Why didn't I think of it? That's so obvious, Lindsay. What's wrong with you? People are going to see this weakness. And it just wasn't the Lindsay I remember being.
Did you notice that at the time, Lindsay, or was it more when you got back to work?
It was more when I was at work. So again, because I left on such a high, I felt like I had that energy, that drive to meet my team. I love being part of the team that I'm in, and I had the luxury of going back to that team. So I had no uncertainty as such. I think it was just the reality had struck that my brain wasn't used to thinking in that same way anymore. And that, as a result, it was that spiral of, I don't think I know how to do this job anymore. So yeah, I think it was more around when I actually got into work, my confidence lowered.
Yeah, I remember when I first went on my first career break, and to have my son, and I didn't at the time. I just didn't think anything about it until I got back into work, and I thought, wow, this has really affected me in terms of my confidence. And I didn't really, I probably underestimated the impact. And I think more and more it's like, events like this, there's a lot more people speaking about it, that you can really understand in terms of to acknowledge it. And it is normal, because sometimes I thought, oh God, am I the only person that's feeling like this? Or, is this normal to feel like this after you've had a period of time off? So, it's great, people like yourself are sharing stories around it, and obviously normalizing it as well, a bit around the whole like imposter syndrome, negative self-talk, etc. Laura, you've had a similar experience to Lindsay in terms of having maternity leave and having a career break. And we all know that, when you have children, it's a huge step, and it sort of makes you look and reassess things in your personal life and also in your career. What did you sort of learn through that process, and what did you discover about your own values and decisions that you were making on your return to work?
Yeah, I feel like I really started to think about myself a lot more than I did before. So in terms of actually, I've now got these little people that need to come first, and I've got to think about like, how do I do the best by them? So that made me really step back and go, actually, I think I need to really rediscover kind of my purpose in my role. And like I said, you do it more when you have kids, because you feel like you're doing it for them, like they're your sort of like the reason why you're getting up and doing it, why you're earning your money, so that you can give them the nice things if you can. So yeah, I think I'm not a very spontaneous person. I like to plan everything, and I like to make sure that I've got everything kind of in my control, and that's what gives me my confidence. So I realised that values were good, and they would help me with that, because obviously it's important to have them as something to follow. So one thing that I kind of learn is that having values, or kind of like where they come from, that comes from within. So a value is something that makes you kind of have a buzz and feel happy, and maybe feel proud of something you do. So yeah, for me, I had to take a bit of a step back and actually have some key values that gave me some control and a bit of confidence in what I was doing.
Brilliant. And sorry to put you on the spot, Laura, but would you mind sharing maybe one of your values that you've sort of identified, and what impact that's had, in terms of confidence and your journey going forward?
Yeah, so one of mine is being courageous. So people who work with me will laugh at this, because I think I'm saying a lot at the minute, but I read recently, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. And this has really stuck with me. Like, you've got to push yourself out of your comfort zone and be a bit brave and be a bit courageous, because that's the only way you're going to change and grow. So yeah, I think that would probably be mine, my main one. Yeah, be a bit more courageous.
Brilliant, fantastic, thank you. And that nicely sort of links around that area of change. And coming back to you, Sheryl, you obviously identified imposter syndrome. And now obviously you're battling in terms of it. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. What practical steps, a bit like what Katie shared, and what's worked for you in terms of reframing in those sort of feelings of being a fraud, etc., that you might potentially feel when you're having that moment of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I honestly think for me it's just purely changing the way you think about it. The feeling I often feel is out of my depth. I'm in tech, but not a techie. There's a lot of tech lingo going around, and I don't know, half of it, probably even less than that. So it's about, okay, yeah, I'm out of my depth, but actually looking at how much do I need to know? How much, do I need to know, and do I actually know it for what I need to know it for? Am I telling myself I'm out of my depth too much to sort of stifle me? So it's kind of just believing and almost changing the way I'm thinking, I think is what I've done really, in terms of taking steps to move from it. Also just realizing, and I know we talked a lot about it today, and you know, recognizing, I mean, in the Confidence Collective, how many people in the first session, you know, said that they related to it. Knowing you're not alone, I think, is such a comfort. You know, it really is. You know, the most successful people suffer from it. So actually, I am normal, and reframing that again of the thoughts that I'm feeling. I also like to sit in meetings sometimes and actually think to myself, well, I'm feeling unconfident maybe, and I'm guessing probably half, maybe if more people are feeling the same. So really sort of telling myself again, speaking to myself, and maybe doing that talk, you know, that self-talk around, actually other people in this room are probably faking it before they make it too. So just really kind of putting that through, asking myself questions. Like, I often say, why are they asking me? Why me on a project? Why am I sat in this meeting? Actually ask myself why I'm asking myself that, and I actually get a silly response from it, and I'm like, or an unvalid one, you know. It's like, actually, no, there's no reason why I shouldn't be there. And I think the other thing, again, sticking with the thoughts around it, is just embracing it. It won't go, it won't disappear. You know, some of the characteristics of imposter syndrome are actually positives. You know, we want to be overachieving. We'll actually turn it into something that makes you do that. So it's kind of a transform thoughts, take them as an opportunity, and grow with it. I think that's the biggest thing. And although that sounds sometimes, when you're speaking about it from, you know, my perspective, could seem a bit fluffy, I genuinely think the thought changing is where it comes from.
No, that's brilliant. What got brilliant advice, Sheryl. Like you've shared so much in just that answer alone that I think a lot of people will relate to. So that's why I've asked you to come on this thing, because you have got a lot to share. And yeah, it's great to obviously ask that, a bit like, again, what we heard earlier about asking yourself, now, would you say that, or would you ask that same question? Because you usually find out, no, I would never ever say, you know, one of the exercises we do in the program is, would you say that to that other person? Because, you know, 10 out of 10 times you wouldn't. So why are you saying it to yourself? So great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cass, have you got anything to add in terms of how you're dealing with imposter syndrome, or things that, you know, you might have tried, worked, things that might have evolved that you would like to share with the community?
I consciously moved sectors as part of the challenge to myself. Being in the banking sector for so long, in different roles, you hit that comfort zone, but you don't push yourself beyond a little boundary either. So it was a really conscious decision of, I need to come out of this area and see what my skills can do. So that was it's not something for everybody, but if you can do something like that, that's really good. Moving around in different sectors, so I did move around quite a lot of different places then, to challenge myself, as well as sort of move around in the career-wise. Pushing myself really into contracting, because I've got to the point where, right, okay, my skills can be moved between different sectors, so I can do the banking, I can do tourism, I can do X, Y, Z, but what about if I just go hit the ground running somewhere? So when I got the opportunity to do that, I didn't hesitate. I got stuck in and did that. Coming back into the world of permanent employment, I feel like I've just become a lot more honest as well. I think as well, though, working where I am now within AO, we are such a really honest community as well, really supportive of each other. So it's a lot easier to be able to talk about it. But I think that was probably be my key thing, is just put yourself out there and say, this is how I'm feeling, because if you're in the right place, you'll get that level of support. And knowing that there's communities such as this one, the Women Confidence Collective, Women in Tech, we all do band together to help and sort of push people along, and what's the correct word? Not push people along, support each other in general.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you really touched on a really important topic there, that, you know, listening to a podcast around, you know, is it actually confidence or is it resilience? You know, the more and more things we put, like you said, you put yourself into different situations to almost become more resilient, to build your confidence. So actually, are we ever going to become confident because we should be putting ourselves, and we're actually building our resilience rather than and it's given me a lot of food for thought, obviously thinking about that in a lot more detail. But I like the analogy of like, right, okay, I know I wanted to push myself, go into different like industry sectors, different roles, and obviously not remaining comfortable in our comfort zone and pushing ourselves, and how it's grown in terms of your confidence. That's that's a really different and interesting take on it. So thank you for sharing on that.
No problem.
So talking about confidence, it's not a destination, it's going to be a journey that's continuous. Just coming back to you, Lindsay, what steps are you putting into place to support what you want to achieve around maybe confidence, or how confidence can support your overall career goals?
Well, I think, Becky, I couldn't agree more with that analogy. It's certainly a journey, but one I'm really starting to embrace now. So a big change for me when returning was reducing my hours. As a mum of two, a main focus for me was having that great work-life balance. So I was happy at home and happy at work. So it was really important. But for me, that was really good from day one, as I had something practical as a goal to kind of focus on straight away. So this meant I needed to be very open and clear with the team around me to say what I can, what I can't commit to each week, and learning, which I would always see as a weakness before, and saying no, that I can't help, because I would have always bent over backwards to try and help, but actually starting to review my priorities more regularly, so that it was more of an open and honest conversation within the team about making sure that I was doing the valuable work. And I think I started to focus on my purpose in the team. So that's something I acknowledge that was kind of slipping. I wanted to stop that self-doubt cycle. So something I got anxiety from when I first come back was meeting new people. So the company had grown so much during the pandemic as well. We were in a fortunate position. I tried to flip that meeting new people and that anxiety onto its head, focusing back on my purpose, meaning that I could, using the meet and greets that were kind of a usual way of getting to know everybody remotely as well, it was an opportunity for me to really share my experience at AO the 4 years prior to my 9 months of maternity leave, and start to share with them what I can be a go-to person for certain subjects, because that was what was important to me. It meant that new feeling started to fade a little bit more, and having that confidence that expert inside me was there. It just needed a little help to get out. So having achieved my work-life balance goal, which I do feel like I regularly have to keep a check on, and to be fair, my team do as well, which is fantastic. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. So what was next for me? The goal setting seemed to work. So through my one-to-one conversations, it felt that I needed that next level. So what was it? And it was line management. And I've been really privileged to have that opportunity given to me earlier this year. And it felt that supporting colleague journeys into AO was quite relatable through the returning to work journey. So I'll probably summarise that being part of the Confidence Collective has kind of inspired me, which is why I'd say I am embracing that now and trying to kind of face up to those confidence demons. But it's not just on my own, it's with the wonderful people as well, and giving me these opportunities to get out of my comfort zone.
Brilliant, Lindsay. And I've got to say, I love you when you quoted yourself as an expert there. That's just amazing. We talk about in terms of the sessions around we are experts, because we if you look at the definition of expert in the dictionary, we all are experts. So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. And then just finally, just coming back to yourself, Laura, obviously, you've had that experience of returning to work, and other people might be going through that same sort of journey for various reasons over the next few months. What would be your learnings from that, and any advice that you could give to people that might be, lacking a bit of confidence, a bit hesitant, maybe changing industries, etc.? Have you got any advice based on your own experiences?
Yeah, I mean, one of my values, another one of them is about building relationships. And I think going back and not being able to just chat at the tea point or speak to the person next to you at the desk was really daunting. And I think I can't even imagine what it's like going into a brand new company where you don't even know anyone and it's all like over a screen. But for me, I would say, just reach out to people, just book in random chats. Like, it might seem really strange at the time just to book in with a random person that you've never spoken to before. But one thing that I always say to my husband is, how many chats do you have with your team? Like, how many catch-ups do you have? And he's like, catch-ups, I don't do that, I just do meetings. And I think, but in the office, you would definitely have stopped and just had a chat with someone about something so random and just got to know them. So why aren't you doing that over Teams and video and whatever? And yeah, he just laughs at me when I say things like this. But I think it's really important, like, to speak to people. You're alone so much in your house all day compared to what you would have been like in the office. So probably the biggest tip, and it'll build your confidence because you're building relationships, you're talking to people, you're getting yourself out there, you're doing a bit of self-promotion as well. Just book in with someone random tomorrow and see how it makes you feel at the end of it. Be a bit courageous, challenge yourself, but yeah, just keep reaching out to people.
I love that. So we should be all reaching out to somebody we don't know tomorrow and having a chat with them, because you not only makes you feel great and builds your confidence, just think about the impact that it has on them as well. It'll be absolutely amazing. So if anyone does it, report back to us on the meetup. Let's see how that goes. That's brilliant. Well, thank you to our panelists. We have got time for a couple of questions. One's actually already come in on the chat, and then I'll see if anyone else has got a question. So this is from your point. I know I probed into it a bit more, Cass, but James is interested in understanding the thoughts about not feeling until entering the IT world. Is it something that people in IT can do or not do that might feel you don't feel less of those imposter syndrome feelings?
I think now that the world of IT has changed a lot. We're a lot more normal about being geeky. I think when I started back in IT, the level of geek was something totally different. So you didn't get that chance to collaborate as much. We were kind of a new generation back then. We often got told off by our line manager for going outside. We'd start off with having a coffee, and by the end of it, the whole team would be out there, but we wouldn't be talking about last night's TV. We'd be talking about whatever we were stuck on and working through it, away from the desk, away from the actual code, everything. We'd just be talking about that problem. So I think that's something that we've really would encourage in every level now, is to collaborate more and more, and don't be afraid of the geekiness of getting that book out and saying, I think I've seen that somewhere in one of my old textbooks or something. I still do it now, from when I did my BA qualifications all those years ago. I still get my book out and say, I'm sure I've seen that somewhere. Let's just have a little refresh. Don't be afraid to do that. And definitely, if anybody's going home and thinking, I need to quit my job because I can't do it, that you need to reach out and have a chat, because you can do it. And there's somebody else that's probably having exactly the same problem, or will be able to say, I did that last week. Let's have a look at it like this. Just, yeah,
it goes back to what Jennifer said earlier on about the power of vulnerability, and vulnerability is just so closely linked to courage. So yeah, totally agree with all what you said there, Cass. So thank you. Jennifer, you got a question?
Well, I've actually got a question for each of the panelists, because they shouldn't be left off the hook. And then I've also got one more question for the panelists plus Louise and Katie overall. So should I just start rattling these off, or how should we? Okay. Well, we'll start with Sheryl. Sheryl, through the first round of the panel, you mentioned working with your imposter syndrome. For you, what does that look and feel like?
Yeah, good question. So I'm such a doubter. I doubt myself so much, to the point where I'll get frustrated that someone's saying I'm doing a good job and I don't believe it. The whole feeling around not deserving to be there, that feeling is real strong for me. Time and time again, my boyfriend said, you're good at your job, you're good at what you do, why do you doubt it? And I think, I don't know, there's something in my mind to keep telling me that I'm not good at it, which is why I really focus on the change in the thoughts and trying to reframe that and say I am. It's hard. I don't think I've got it right, and I don't think I will get it to the point that, you know, I've absolutely accomplished it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me, just feeling like I'm not doing a good enough job.
And so you work with it, though, as far as like trying to counter it and that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. For Cass, actually, you sort of kind of answered the question already in the dialogue between you and Becky, but I'm going to reiterate it again because it kind of stuck out to me when you said it. And that's, you were describing coming into a room where everybody else is at this level and you're at this level and that sort of thing. So what do you think generates that perception of you being here and everyone else there? Or do you have anything more that you want to add to that after the dialogue that you had with Becky on the subject?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely goes hand in hand with the negative self-talk. It's very much an up there perception. I don't think I walk into a room and everybody looks at me and goes, get out. Not since I was at school anyway. I think it's definitely something that's an internal thought, but I think a lot of people think that, to be honest. And how do you manage it? I mean, a lot of people have seen the ring that I wear. It says that I am enough, so I do often look at that during the day and remind myself that I can do it. That was something that's for lots of different reasons. So yeah, I think that's probably a big reminder to yourselves. You are enough, you are good enough. If you weren't meant to be there, then something would have come up and moved you in a different direction. And because I do believe a lot of in fate, and you are where you are at the right time it's meant to be. So I think just a little bit more self-belief.
No, I like the idea of that ring too. I might get myself one. So for Lindsay, what struck me in your first piece with the panel and everything was about how you kind of have like mom think, and then you've got work think, and you know, these are separate places in your mind, never should they cross, and all that fun stuff. So for a mom returning to work, looking to kind of shorten that relearning curve for getting back into work think, do you have any tips or ideas there?
For me, a piece of advice I'd share around, I think it's around that way of thinking will kind of switch in that nervousness around, I've not exercised that part of the brain, which is what I mentioned. For me, it was around minimizing that feeling of being you. So what really helped me was creating that network before I actually returned back to work. So I stayed in touch with colleagues, with friends that worked for AO, and kept that open dialogue, whether it be talking about my family, friends, but also reaching out to understand the changes that were happening around the business. So I stayed in touch, meaning that it didn't necessarily feel like I've got loads to catch up on. It reduced that for me, and that fear of I'm going into somewhere that's completely new. So I would say that was really key for me, just to make sure that I'd already got a network. So when I joined, I also started, like Laura returned back a few months before me. So already we connected, and we kind of looped in straight away to say about how are you managing your work-life balance? How are you doing this? And we shared tips between ourselves as well. So don't feel alone in the situation. There are other people returning to work from a long break for different reasons, and it's the same struggle.
It is, absolutely. Thank you for that. Laura, you love to be a planner. It's where you build your confidence from, and inevitably life happens and change happens. When change is sudden, how do you cope with that?
Not so well. I'm only joking. You've got to plan for change as well, haven't you, in a way? So you've got your little backup ideas and things like that. So yeah, when change happens, you just plan for that next bit of change. So as an example, and it's outside of work, I've had it before, kind of like through COVID, with planning to go on one holiday and suddenly it gets cancelled and you've got to get another one. I'm that weird person who looks at every single review on a website, and if it's got one bad review, I'm like, no, we're not going. So I'll put that effort back in. I'll refine somewhere and put all that same plan, behind it. But yeah, change does happen, and I do embrace it. I'm not saying that I'm only like stay on the path of just things going well, but you've always got to have a backup plan. You've always got to plan that something's going to go wrong. And working on a project at the minute with a third party client, and I think we're up to plan C or plan D. Matt Rooney's on the call, he'll be nodding away. But it's how you adapt to that, and how you make sure that, as a project manager, how are my developers okay with that change? Has everyone got the requirements through, the BA supporters, that they can get what they need for it? So like I said, you always expect something not to fully go well within a plan, with any plan. But if you have a backup plan, you're usually okay.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And finally, for all of our panelists, including our presenters, Louise and Katie, question for all of you guys, or gals, I should say. Anyhow, so your Confidence Collective journey is about to come to an end. How are you going to sustain your confidence moving forward?
I want to stay involved in things like this, to do more, putting myself out there on talks, keep supporting Becky in what she's doing, and being an advocate for the courses that she's running, because it's really, really helped.
Yeah, I think practice, and keep on practicing it, and just don't let that, practice makes perfect, but I think it'll always be practicing it to get it to perfect.
It's a great question, Jen, because it's something that came up after the back of the third one. I think the third one, where we talked around making ourselves a little bit famous. So it was the one where we started to think about panel talks and video clips and things like that. And we've got the most value out of it. And I think we came out with this going, oh my goodness, it's going to be the fourth one. It's the last one. Do we start thinking about how we regroup after this? I know we'll always form part of the wider collective as well, but I think we've really formed a strong bond. So I think it's something we'd love to tackle together and try and make it continue as much as we can.
The one thing that I've learned over the past year, and it sounds so simple, is to talk. So I find talking so difficult. Like I just don't talk about my feelings at all. And that person that will bottle them up and then have a meltdown and cry all over you. But the one thing that keeps surprising me, I don't know why it keeps surprising me, but that talking does help. So talking with my manager, that's how I ended up moving teams, and that made a massive difference. There was one of the BAs who I was talking to, and I remember was joking because we were like, oh yeah, they always say, what's the best part of your week? And I'm like, yeah, it's that 1 hour on Monday at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, that shouldn't be the thing that I can point out in my week. But talking to him, he was in the exact same position. So straight away, I wasn't on my own. So then that takes away that feeling of it's just me. And I think that is the one thing that has really helped. And it continues to be hard, even though I've got proof that it helps. But yeah, that I would say that's the one thing.
Laura, Louise, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I think for me, at the very start of the course, you ask the question, where are you now and where do you want to get to? And that really stuck with me. I don't think I'd really thought about my goals and aspirations as much as I did with this course. And I think that question will always stick with me. Every year I'm going to reassess it. Where am I now? And where am I going to get to? Where do I want to get to? And then create some values around that. So like I said, what's giving me that buzz? What's making me proud? What's making me happy? And that will help me create that journey. So it's never going to leave me, this. And like the rest of the girls were saying, I definitely want to be part of any of the other things that are happening, future talks. I want to attend them, and I want to just keep my toes in. But I'll definitely be reassessing where I am today and where I need to get to.
Louise, anything to add before?
Yes. No, I'm muted. I think for me, it's going to be embracing that bit of me that signs up for things without thinking about it, and instead of seeing it as a flaw, see it as something that's good, and just going for it and then worrying about it later.
Brilliant, fantastic, thank you. I did say last one, but I had a message someone asking if they could ask a question. So Ellie, are you there? Would you like to ask a question?
Hi. Yeah, so I just wondered if any of you, particularly the people who like to cling back to a certificate or a big list of facts, if you've got any advice or insight on trusting your instinct and sticking by it, even if you've not got evidence to go with it.
Any advice on what to do with that instinct?
Yeah, because I mean, I typically I will, you know, and if I have a certificate or if I have a really well recorded set of evidence, you know, I will fight to the death. But if that little chink of doubt shows, I think, is my instinct right, or is this person who speaks with greater confidence than me right? And I, you know, I think you'll often find that your instinct is right. And
I was just going to say that your instinct is probably a real little gut feeling that you should probably always listen to. I can't think of any times when, for me personally, where instinct has not helped. At that moment in time, it's been the right thing to do. There might be hindsight and different things that I've learned since then that I'd be like, oh, if I'd have known then what I know now. But at that moment in time, it's been the right thing to do. So if you're thinking that maybe you're not getting told the full information when you're trying to get some requirements, for example, there's nothing wrong with just reaching out in a few different areas and saying and validating that. And in validating that, you're validating yourself a little bit as well. So don't put the doubt there, just reach out in different little ways, but follow your instinct, I would say always.
I'd say as well, particularly within tech, I know I was like, I want the certificate, but apart from that one certificate, which isn't even in business analysis, let's face it, I did 12 months of mentoring, and someone asked me the other day, oh, what books shall I read? And I was like, actually, I didn't read a book in that whole 12 months. I've literally spent probably 20 hours with someone. But when you look across the whole tech kind of world, especially at AO, it might not be the same elsewhere, but within AO, within the BAs, we have a mentoring scheme. So we're bringing BAs in that haven't got it. The PMs, I know there's PMs that haven't got any qualifications. Even developers, so many developers that we work with that are self-taught, and I trust them as a BA that doesn't know anything about developing. I trust the ones that are self-taught as much as the ones that aren't, and I couldn't, if you put them in a lineup in front of me, I wouldn't tell you which ones had done it or not. And probably a bit cheesy, but I remember reading something about Obama, and he said if he's got a decision to make, if he's even just 51% more certain on one option than the other, it's 51%, so you've got to go with it because you've not got time to deliberate over them small things. When he's like, obviously he's the president, was the president, but I think that same sentiment applies. At one point you've just got to go for it.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. Great question as well. Really, really good question. Something that, you know, I hear that crops up a lot. So thank you so much for asking that. Brilliant. Thank you to our fantastic panelists. What a great conversation. Hope you agree. We've got so much out of that. So thank you. And thank you for the great questions.